Welcome back to Defence Talks, Securing UK Advantage, a podcast brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with trade association ADS Group and sponsored by industry powerhouse BAE Systems. Every 2 weeks, our podcast discusses key questions that shape defence, technological and national security agendas in the UK, and explores the main themes in British defence in the context of intensifying geopolitical competition. The UK defence sector is a national and international success story, a world leader in defence capability, supporting our armed forces and those of our allied partners. The UK is also the second largest defence exporter in the world, exporting £7.4 billion worth of capabilities and services to allies and partners. Statistics from ADS Group show that in 2022, the defence sector employed 147,500 people, including 6,900 apprentices, and generating £22.8 billion in turnover and adding £9.8 billion in value to the UK. The defence sector also employs people in all regions and nations of the UK, and 70% of defence jobs are located outside of London and the South East. People are at the core of defence, and if we want the UK to continue to lead in innovation in defence and security, be able to deter conflict and protect our way of life, we need to ensure we have a workforce that is capable of delivering and is passionate about what they do. And in this first episode of 2024, which coincides with the National Apprenticeship Week, we will examine a crucial topic for the success of the UK defence industry. How can we develop and secure our most talented future workforce? I'm Victoria Starrick-Summerlin, co-founder and director of strategy at the Council on Geostrategy, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined for this episode by Paul Oxley, Director of Government and Policy at ADS Group, David Robinson, Director, Post-16 and Skills at Education Policy Institute, and Tilly Watts, Engineering Degree Apprentice at BAE Systems. Welcome everyone. Perhaps let's begin with an overview of the situation. Paul, what is the defence industry looking for, and what are the biggest challenges the defence industry faces when it comes to securing new talent?
Thanks very much, Victoria. Well, as you noted there in your introduction, the strength of the UK defence industry to the United Kingdom. Now, when you take into account, on top of that, the objectives of the government in achieving the Defence Command Paper and looking at the projects that the UK defence industry has currently ongoing, when you take into respect AUKUS Pillar 1, we're moving into AUKUS Pillar 2, and also looking at the range of conflicts that are happening around the world. It's extremely important that the UK defence industry maintains its strategic advantage through a level of high skills attraction for the sector. Now, we have over 1,300 members at ADS, and we engage regularly on what their top priorities of the year are. And time and time again, members are saying to us that their number one priority is the skills agenda and a workforce shortage. Now, we're not alone. The defence sector is not alone in the UK on a skills shortage. We work with a number of different trade associations, and they are listing that as one of their number one priorities as well. It is simply a fact that across the world there is a skills shortage, particularly around advanced manufacturing. And I'm sure we'll go into that further on into the realms of what that means in terms of the education sector. But for us, it's to maintain the growth in the defence sector, we do need to make sure that we have sustained growth in our skills attraction.
David, you're the Director for Post-16 and Skills at the Education Policy Institute. Now, Paul referenced skills deficit, skills shortage a couple of times. We often hear about the UK's critical skills deficit. In your view, does such a deficit really exist?
Yeah, I mean, we regularly hear from employers across all sectors that they are struggling to fill vacancies. And I think in around 10% of those cases, that's due to specific skills shortages. The kinds of skills that we hear from employers that they are lacking from applicants are things like team working, problem solving, analytical skills, but also more basic skills such as basic numeracy and literacy. One of the things that also characterises the UK in terms of the supply of skills is that we actually do have what's known as the missing middle. We have around a quarter of people qualified to level 3, which is the equivalent of A-levels. We have another quarter qualified to level 6, which is like a typical undergraduate degree. And then there's a gap in terms of those who are qualified to level 4 or 5. That and level 4 and 5 sort of translates as an HNC, or you might have heard an HND, those kinds of qualifications. Employers actually are looking for people qualified at those levels, but there's just not the supply of young people leaving the education system with those levels of qualifications. So yeah, there is definitely a skills shortage.
Tilly, we are absolutely delighted to have you with us today, and I know that you're currently in your final year working towards your Bachelor's of Engineering degree in aerospace engineering as part of your apprenticeship. So could you please tell us a bit more about your knowledge and awareness of career opportunities in defence? Can you tell us a little more perhaps about how you came to join BAE Systems in the first place?
So I grew up in Suffolk, where there's very little industry presence. So my main sort of first knowledge of defence was through the Air Cadets. I had an interest in aviation when I was young, joined the Air Cadets, and through that I got to visit companies like Rolls-Royce, got to go out to Sweden and visit Saab, etc. But BAE Systems never really crossed my mind until I went to the Royal International Air Tattoo Air Show, and I saw that huge banner on the side of one of their hangars, and that made me think about a bit more about who they are. It wasn't until I was sort of leaving school and thinking about university, I initially wanted to join the RAF as an engineering officer, but to do that you need a degree. When I was looking into universities, I then came across degree apprenticeships, sort of just stumbled across them really. And then from that realised that actually I'd be more interested in the type of things that BAE do rather than the RAF, because it's earlier in the engineering life cycle. And also Tempest had been announced in 2018, and I was applying in sort of late 2018, early 2019, and I was really excited about the prospect of working on Tempest. So yeah, applied, and the rest is history.
Amazing. But Tilly, in your view, would you agree that the skills deficit really exists?
Potentially. I'd say that's maybe because people actually don't know about the opportunities that are out there, rather than, I think when you're already in the industry, it's probably quite easy to see that, look at all these great opportunities that are out there. But when you're in school and you're thinking about your careers, I think schools tend to push university, getting students into the top Russell Group universities, getting them into Oxbridge, and then apprenticeships are kind of an aside to that. I mean, I think that is changing, and I think I saw a stat that actually some degree apprenticeships are now harder to get into than Oxbridge, but I think when people realise that, they'll start talking about apprenticeships in the same regard as they talk about the top universities, and that would be fantastic.
So if we want to address the skills deficit, we probably need to look into the collaboration between industry and academia, or education sector more broadly, in the field of STEM. So by STEM, I mean science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for the future of the defence workforce. Paul, how important are these collaborative programs, and could you please shed some light on the existing ones?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it's extremely important that we make sure that we start the interface with the engagement with academia from as young as possible, to get young people at a primary school age interested in STEM. I think it's fair to say that the curriculum is currently not constructed in such a way in which learning is aligned with STEM examples. In Scotland, you'll find that the education system, in terms of primary learning, you'll find that their curriculum is structured around a prose, so that you may find an example of a mathematics or science list of questions being along the theme of an astronaut needs to get to the moon, or they need to build a rocket, and how do they get there, for example. Whereas in the rest of the UK, I don't feel that the curriculum is structured in that sense to get young people interested in STEM.
Right.
Now, one area one thing that we at ADS we've run for a number of years is the UK rocketry competition, which has always been aimed at a senior school level, and that's aimed at getting young people to build an actual rocket, and it follows a strict criteria of it must send an egg up into the sky, the egg must come down safely, and we were really pleased that for the last year that the UK won the international rocketry competition at Paris Air Show, first time since 2019. Now, those sorts of examples are great at getting people interested into the idea of a career in STEM, but like I say, we feel it should be done at a much younger level. I mean, one example we're looking at is actually adapting the UK rocketry competition into a Minecraft interface with the organisation Ingenuity. So getting primary school youngsters to build a digital rocket and send it up to promote that interest. So yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be a clear interest as to what learning in the early stages of curriculum, what that means for a future career. And also, I do believe it is really important to have the correct provision in terms of careers advice at schools. I mean, Tilly noted that she didn't know about degree apprenticeships. It was purely by chance that she saw that from seeing an industry event. We really do need to make sure that industry works with government and the Department for Education to ensure that the right level of careers advice is there for all students across the country.
Tilly, can you talk us through your experience about learning STEM subjects at school? Was this hands-on and engaging?
I think that it was more to pass an exam, really. I mean, I did maths, physics and product design at A-level. And I chose those, I think, initially because I wanted to be an architect, and then I sort of wanted to go more into engineering and be with aviation because of doing some work experience at Duxford at the Imperial War Museum, and realised I was more interested in aircraft. So I think maths and physics are subjects that they are known to be tough. I think, well, there are only 2 females in my class of about 12. And yeah, I actually only scraped the grades to get into my degree apprenticeship, but there were people that got A's and A stars that ended up on the same course. So I think schools need to focus more on a broad approach to learning rather than just, okay, you need to get A's and A stars, get into the top unis, etc. It should be based more on experience. And I think I was quite fortunate. I mentioned the cadets earlier. The cadets sort of helped to provide me with that more rounded view of the industry that I wanted to be in. And I think I was very fortunate from that perspective.
David, would you have any examples when it comes to industry and academia collaboration? And also on top of this, what is the recipe for this, required holistic approach curriculum to address the future workforce challenges in your view?
So I'll start on the second of those, if that's okay. So I think at the moment there are some reasons to be positive about the STEM pipeline, so the pipeline of young people picking up those skills. Maths is the most popular A-level by some margin. Computing has seen the biggest rise in popularity in recent years. I certainly think biology and chemistry in the top 5 A-levels as well. So there has been a drive, an increase in the uptake of STEM qualifications, but of course that only impacts those who decide to take those qualifications at 16. And there's many students who don't take A-levels at 16. They might take a vocational qualification or qualifications, or indeed they might take an apprenticeship. So whilst there is a fair amount of STEM uptake at 16, most students don't actually take those qualifications. And you might be aware that recently the government announced that the sort of maths to 18 policy, that all students would continue to study those qualifications. And indeed, the government followed that up with an announcement that in 10 years or so, A-levels and T-levels, which are the sort of vocational technical equivalent of A-levels that's been introduced recently, will be scrapped and replaced with something called the Advanced British Standard, which would provide a much broader range of study. So all students would do some form of maths, some form of English, and a range of other subjects up until the age of 18. So I think that might potentially begin to help with the sort of breadth of study and study of STEM subjects for a longer period than young people have done to this point. Of course, there are many, many challenges in delivering that sort of vast change in curriculum. Not least, we don't have enough STEM teachers to do all the teaching. But I think it is a recognition, at least, that there are some challenges here in terms of the skills provided to young people in terms of a broader curriculum.
So how can we increase the appeal of this curriculum and of these qualifications?
So, I mean, of course, what the government would be doing in this way would be mandating that all students would study a broader range of subjects, English and maths. And actually, I think that is quite sensible. The system that we have of students taking just 3 A-levels, for example, and a quite narrow curriculum, is one that I think was suited to the sort of higher education system of maybe 50 years ago, but these days even universities are saying that students don't necessarily have as broad a range of skills as they might hope for in studying those in studying degree qualifications. So I think that would definitely be a positive next step. But as I said, one of the key challenges there is providing the right number of teachers to provide those qualifications.
Paul, I see that you're very keen to add something.
Yes, no, I'd just like to add that when it comes to education providers, I should add really that the universities across the country do work extremely well with our, in particular, our industries. I mean, today, it being the first day of National Apprenticeship Week, BAE, for example, have just launched the first ever degree in space systems engineering in collaboration with the University of Portsmouth. Now, that sort of partnership is absolutely perfect when it comes to addressing the skills agenda. So it's making sure that we are designing the right courses for the skills needs for the future. That's the sort of thing that, in terms of education provider industry collaboration, it's that sort of example that we need to see more of.
And hopefully World Space also sounds as something exciting and attractive to the younger generation. Well, that's an excellent initiative. We have covered a broad area of, well, challenges that actually impact not only the defense sector, but other industry sectors too. So the critical skills shortage, of course. However, when it comes to defense recruitment more specifically, advanced manufacturing as a whole is affected by critical skills shortages, and defense faces further challenges due to clearances and nationalities as well. So issues with attracting international talent to the defense sector. Paul, how is this issue being addressed?
Yes, and it's like you note, Victoria, there is an issue around security clearance, and some roles can only be obtained by people with British passports or British nationalities, British citizenship, sorry. Now, there are a number of roles in the defence sectors that are in short supply that don't have those sorts of limitations on them. Welders, for example, is something that in the defence sector we are really in short supply of. Now, one thing we are really keen to see at ADS is amendments to the shortage occupation list from the Home Office. Now, the way the occupation list works at the moment is that there is essentially a short list of roles that if you have experience in those specific roles, then you're able to obtain a skilled visa. Now, the issue we have with the occupation list is you need to have experience in those exact roles. It doesn't actually take into account the flexibility in transferable skills. We're seeing this across the world in which roles are being offered to people where they have, say, for example, experience in motor manufacturing, and they're able to transfer over with a short retraining window into a new role. Now, we really would like to see that flexibility added to the shortage occupation list. So rather than a defined experience in a certain role, there should actually be a way of working out what the transferable skill sets that are required for that role and attracting those people over.
So that's one barrier affecting defense recruitment. Now, the other one, of course, defense sector is often misconstrued as an old boys club, and probably, well, Tilly will be able to chip in here. Although the situation, of course, has been improving in recent years, and I would say substantially so. But Tilly, in your view, how do you think the defense sector could appeal more to more diverse groups and women? And what's important in your view to people today, younger generation, when seeking jobs?
So within my team, actually there's quite a few women, and we're quite a diverse group in human factors. But actually I think in engineering as a whole, if you wanted to influence more people to join the industry, you need to, at a younger age, start to involve them in more STEM subjects, and that means they'll pick the subjects at school that will then lead them into an engineering career. I think it's good to have role models, but I think you'll start to have those role models and see more role models as younger people grow up, choose those careers, and then get into the industry. I think trying to select people just because of their background, because of their gender, isn't the right way to go. It has to be at that younger level rather than at the application phase. And the more people you reach, the more applicants there'll be. And then if you affect the grassroots, that will have an influence on having a more representative workforce in the future. In terms of what's important to people when they're seeking jobs, I think inclusivity, as we said before, the opportunity to travel is quite a big thing. Tempest, as we're working with Italy and Japan, when that work share is agreed eventually, there will be the opportunity to travel, hopefully, which will be really, really good. I think in terms of apprenticeships, one of the best benefits of apprenticeships is being able to move around different areas and learn about different parts of engineering. We say engineering as one term, but there's so much within engineering. Engineering is so broad that you can't possibly know at 18 what you want to go into. So I had no idea that I'd end up in human factors, but it's definitely the area that I fit into and the area that I'd want to be in. I definitely didn't know that at 18. So I think the chance to actually be able to move around placements, experience different things. Nobody stays in the same job as they used to. It used to be you joined at 18 and then when you're 60 or 65, you're retiring doing the same thing. It's not the case anymore. So I think people want that ability to develop, to experience different things, to be able to travel, and that will make a good, well-rounded career.
David, any additional thoughts on the barriers affecting particularly defence recruitment?
I certainly agree with what Tilly was saying about, and Paul in fact, with regards to building the pipeline early, good careers, information, advice and guidance, the importance of promoting technical routes, including apprenticeships. It's definitely true that apprenticeships have grown massively in recent years, and I think the Degree Apprenticeships is a great programme. But also we've seen a big fall off in the number of younger apprentices, actually, those aged 16 to 18, so those taking apprenticeships instead of progressing to A-levels or T-levels. I think perhaps the government could be doing more to encourage take-up at that age. That would definitely be a positive step, including apprenticeships in STEM sectors or STEM-related sectors. I think there's a variety of steps that the government needs to take to try and increase uptake.
So in your view, what levers the industry needs from the government to fight against the critical skills gap in defence?
I think engaging with discussions around the breadth of the curriculum, I think, are really important. There is this ABS consultation. Sorry, the ABS is the thing that's due to replace A-levels and T-levels. Engaging with the government on that issue, which I think is a really important one, particularly at the moment where, of course, the current government is proposing this big shift over a 10-year period, but of course the current government is not leading in the polls. So I think engaging with opposition parties with regards to breadth of the curriculum would probably be a sensible step. And as we've mentioned throughout the course of this discussion so far, it's just promoting those alternative pathways.
Paul?
Well, as you noted earlier, Victoria, 70% of those jobs in defence are outside of London and the South East. Now, what you traditionally see, especially from the graduates, is that they do their degree across the country and then they have a view of moving to London, as that's the perception, as that's where the jobs are. So, for one, I think we need to look at addressing that image. There's also the point around 70% of jobs being based outside of London and the South East. Looking at whatever you want to badge it, levelling up, regional regeneration, regional development, and the opportunity that our sectors have to regional economies. So it's a case of making sure that the MOD is talking to Treasury, the Department for Levelling Up, Department for Culture, Media and Sport, to make sure that the right investment is put into the regions in which our sectors provide have such a strong economic deliverable to the UK, to make sure the right level of investment is going into those regions, so we can attract the right level of workforce to those places. I mean, it should be a huge success story to anyone wanting to lay down their roots in the southwest, the northwest, the northeast, where the cost of living is considerably lower than London and the southeast, but you're going into a career where actually the salaries are higher than the national average. That should be in itself a major draw for people to consider a career in the defence sector in the UK. But we've got to make sure that the right level of infrastructure is there to support them as they lay down their roots in those regions.
Of course. And Paul, ADS recently released their 2024 manifesto, which calls upon all political parties to commit to a renewed industrial strategy. Does this strategy address the issue of skills shortage?
Yes, it absolutely does. And some of the key recommendations we've made into our manifesto is that pushing for that certainty for for industrial strategy. It's no secret that the nature of ramping up and ramping down in defence production does not help with the skills agenda, because it's hard to retain a workforce with that sort of approach. So there does need to be a clear forward strategy for industrial growth. And yes, when it comes to addressing the skills gap, we are calling for future governments to ensure that that there is a level playing field when it comes to, as I noted before, careers advice in schools, reforms to the apprenticeship levy. As it stands, the levy has been a good thing for industries recruiting for apprenticeships, but there is a lack of flexibility in the system, particularly when it comes to reskilling and upskilling existing workforces. So we would like to see reforms to the apprenticeship levy so it adds a level of flexibility for people to retain the existing workforce that they have today.
Paul, David and Tilly, thank you so much for joining me today and discussing this very important, well, I would say crucial topic when it comes to making sure that our defense industry is successful. How can we develop and secure our most talented future workforce? Thank you so much for your contributions, and thank you for listening to Defence Talk Securing UK Advantage, brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with ADS and sponsored by BAE Systems. If you would like to submit a question for our next episodes, please email them to defencetalks@geostrategy.org.uk. And to find out more about our new podcast and upcoming episodes, visit www.geostrategy.org.uk/defencetalks. Thank you, and until next time.